If Masters of Home Service has been a game changer for you and your business, then we want to hear from you. Go leave us a review and tell us what you think. Help us build this community and level up together.
A common one that I hear is, not micro-targeting or not targeting in local areas correctly. You'll see that a lot. And that just means you're throwing your dollars away because people are looking at your ads that aren't even in your area.
Right.
And that's sad. I mean, that's when you're talking, I don't know, anywhere from $1 to $10 a click potentially. I mean, you're talking a lot of money you're throwing away.
Welcome to Jobber's Masters of Home Service, a podcast for home service pros by home service pros. We are in sunny Las Vegas talking about knowing your numbers. I'm your host, Adam Sylvester. Today's guest is Tyler Martin. He is a business coach and CFO for small to medium-sized businesses, and he's the host of Think Business with Tyler podcast. Tyler, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Adam. Nice to be here.
Give our audience a little bit of a background of you and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm a CPA and a small business CFO. I work with clients, generally small to medium-sized clients, and I help them scale and grow their business through financial strategies and planning.
Great. Well, let's get into it because I'm excited to have your insights on some of this stuff because knowing your numbers is really important, as you know. A lot of our listeners don't know their numbers, and let's be real, that has become such a thrown around phrase lately. Like it's a buzzword, know your numbers. And I think people get kind of tired of hearing that, even though it's important. Let's talk about specifically revenue streams. Why is it important for listeners to really understand where their money comes from?
Yeah, so I think the revenue streams, what you find from knowing your revenue streams, where the money's coming from, is you really find out where you're making money and where you're not. And if, frankly, if you kind of put your head in the sand and don't look at that data, sometimes you're doing things that just don't make sense for your business. I mean, they're affecting your bottom line. And I do agree with you about kind of knowing your numbers is the cliche thing to say. But I will tell you, having been in, accounting and finance now for many years, nothing's changed. The people that know their numbers, the people that dig in and take some time to learn them are usually the ones that do the best.
I like what you said. I heard you say this before, which was be a data-driven business.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Know your numbers.
Yeah.
Sorry, not trying to be a smart aleck, but yeah, it's just knowing your numbers, understanding, those key variables. So like gross profit is a common one. Understanding what I could define gross profit if you want, but understanding what gross profit is, knowing your overhead, managing it to it, and then you have a formula of 50, 30, 20, which is a common one actually, which means 50% GP, 30% overhead, 20% bottom line. I mean, that's kind of just the fact that you know that you're ahead of many.
Yeah. I remember in my business, we do gutters and we got a little distracted, and I'll say distracted on purpose, and we started pressure washing. Man, it was a different revenue stream. We liked the money that we got from it, but it wasn't, first of all, it was making us wider, not taller. It was making us less of a healthy business because we're spread too thin. And the revenue was nice, but it wasn't really that profitable. So I think a lot of our listeners get in trouble where they think, oh, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll do that, we'll do that. And they're not really making money doing any of those things.
Yeah. I think there's like this shiny object syndrome type thing, hanging like Christmas lights, for example, is a common one. I think that I hear a lot nowadays in my area. It can be a way to make additional revenue stream for sure, but it also can be a distraction from your business if you're not really thinking through what your business plan is for that, how you're going to dedicate staff, what you're going to charge. All those factors that are involved in that, what's your profitability on it? Is it just to keep technicians busy during off season? Is that the goal? That's okay. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but how does that impact your numbers?
Yeah.
And so these are things where I think it's easy to kind of get caught up in just taking on the shiny object syndrome is what I would call it.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of revenue, what are some healthy forms of revenue, like not service specific, but within the service industry? What are some healthy maintenance agreements and those kinds of things? What are some things that our listeners should be focused on?
I mean, obviously, like recurring revenue is like the diamond. Anytime you can. We had a conversation, you and I, about starting the month with a certain amount of expenses, right? You can kind of every month we look at our rent. We look at our health insurance, all those fixed costs that we're guaranteed to have. That's a certain number you start the month with. Well, the beautiful thing about recurring revenue, it's the same way, but it works the other way. You can start the month with $30,000 of guaranteed revenue that's going to roll in for that month.
Yeah.
So that's the diamond. That's the one you're trying for. But then you also got to think about, are there services that maybe make sense that give us a more complete offering? So maybe maintenance, the reason you enter that market is so that you're not just doing a one-time service that's every 5 years. Maybe you're doing inspections to open the door to get that regular service or that maintenance service. So you kind of got to think strategically too. Like, am I trying to create more of an offering to my customer base that they have reason to come to me more often?
Yeah. So there's recurring revenue. There's packages. How do packages play into it? Because I imagine you can blend the wrong services together into a package and also blend the right ones. How does that fit into the financial picture?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to kind of look at your cost and understand what's your cost of that package that I'm offering. Then you also, what I'm a big fan of is I think you got to pilot. You kind of got to test some packages, and you got to see what kind of works and what resonates with your market and what makes sense from a logistics standpoint. Because logistics is a big part of this, right? Like if you're going to offer, a monthly maintenance plan that offers, 5 free maintenances a month or something, kind of got to think about the logistics of that and how am I going to be able to get coverage for that. So I think those are the big things, some of the big things you need to think about when designing packages. But I'm also a fan of kind of piloting a package. Like, okay, let's take this out to 20 customers and just test it for this particular area and see how it works. What do our margins look like? Are they what we thought they would be? Are we seeing some things not working? Is travel taking more time than we thought it would be? Just all those things that sometimes you can map things out, but until you really kind of test them out, you don't really know what the end result will be.
Yeah, yeah. I love trying things. Whenever our technicians come to me and say, Adam, I got a great idea. Well, let's try it. I heard this one time. Let's shoot BBs, not cannonballs. Let's shoot a couple BBs, see where they go, and then eventually we're gonna shoot the cannonball once we really dialed it in. For us, that was annual memberships. We're like, annual memberships, there's potential there, but we also don't know we don't know.
Right. Right.
And there's all kinds of, maybe this is a terrible idea, but if you roll it out slowly, you can test it a little bit.
I truly think that's an element of being successful in business, is being willing to take some risks, some chances, controlled risk, and just testing some things out. Because sometimes you get answers you don't even expect. Like you're like, oh my gosh, this is wildly successful. I didn't think it'd get this type of response. And that opens up a whole new door for you. So I think that's great that you do it at a BB level and not, all in.
Tyler, this is a great conversation. I want to take pause real quick and talk about how Jobber helps me with knowing my numbers. So Jobber's reports are great. You can pull a request report and know how many leads you're getting each month. And then you can see how many of those leads converted to a quote, and then ultimately how much money you got from those leads. And so the Jobber reporting really helps you know from an operations standpoint and leads, quotes, and jobs, how you're doing. And so I pull those reports every week, and it helps really, really know my numbers. So new users can get an exclusive discount by going to jobber.com/podcast deal and start knowing your numbers today with Jobber. This is kind of dear to me. I want your input on this. Let's say we have all the data we need and we have all of our numbers all correct and all that kind of stuff. How do you actually use it? Because I feel like it can collect dust a little bit. And then 6 months after a problem started, you're like, we have a huge problem. And you're like, well, my question for you is, how quickly can you really realistically see a trend going in the wrong direction? Whether it's a revenue trend or an expense trend or a sales trend, there's these trends in business that a lot of times business owners find out there's a problem way too late. Yeah. And I want to find out that problem sooner. How can we do that? Any tips on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's 2 different types of numbers. You got numbers that are showing you kind of letting you look ahead. So what are numbers that let you look ahead? They might be leads that you're getting. They might be leads that you're converting. It lets you see if you're getting leads, that's going to convert to business, at least a certain percentage. Those are forward looking. Then you have data that's after the fact, and that's financial statements, right? So I think with the combination of those 2, you can get a pretty good idea of really almost real time, if not at least by the end of the month, that, hey, I'm starting to see a trend. I've got a problem. And then if you combine that with a budget, that's going to immediately kind of tell you, wow, I budgeted 100K of sales last month. I've only got 80K. What's going on here? What's the reason for that? And then you look at your leads and, oh, well, I had 30% leads. Or what if you had more leads than normal, but your sales went down? Well, why? What? Oh, it's because I have a whole new sales staff. Or, I have
my sales weren't as good as they used to be.
I mean, just something weird. These are things that you can spot. You can kind of, before they become a quote unquote trend, you can start to get, your magnifying glass around what's causing these. And I think what I see a lot of companies do is they do wait for the trend. And then they go, now I've got a problem. I'm 6 months in, I'm 9 months in, and I've seen declining sales.
Right.
That's not ideal. Like, I'd like to see, in that first month or two, like, let's try to understand what's causing this problem.
Yeah.
And how long are we going to wait around before we make adjustments or try to tweak to get a better result?
Yeah. I have a whole spreadsheet that the whole year shows me per week how many leads I should be getting each week, how many jobs I should be booking each week, how much value those jobs should be, and all these different things. And so, and every week it's refreshed and renewed. And so if I go in and it says I should have gotten 30 leads, I only got 10, whoa, that's a problem. And the numbers don't really lie very often. Sometimes there's like a discrepancy and you can kind of like justify it, but you can't justify it for long. And so I would encourage our listeners, like, go figure out like how many leads should you be getting in the month of June. And if you don't get those leads, then you need to address it now, not like in October or November later when you realize, oh, this trend started. But you can only do that if you think ahead and decide what that number should be before it ever comes around.
Right. Very forward thinking. I love that. And I would even go as far as like looking ahead, like, where are your leads coming from? Am I investing? What's my return on each one of those channels? And do they make sense? And maybe a channel doesn't make sense. Maybe it doesn't merit our time.
That is so true. Talk more about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, usually using a paid advertising medium is probably the easy, like the easy one to kind of pick on.
Victim,
yeah. Because you can just throw a ton of money at it. A common one that I hear is, not micro-targeting or not targeting in local areas correctly. You'll see that a lot. And that just means you're throwing your dollars away because people are looking at your ads that aren't even in your area.
Right.
And that's sad. I mean, that's when you're talking, I don't know, anywhere from $1 to $10 a click potentially. I mean, you're talking a lot of money you're throwing away for no chance for any benefit at all. So things like that, I mean, you really have to look at but you got to have the data to be able to even start to talk about, am I putting money in the right buckets? And part of it is looking at that forward-looking data.
For me, it was Nextdoor. So I was shooting BBs. And I spent $500 a month on Nextdoor ads, the app Nextdoor, and boy, was it bad. It was so ineffective. And so after about 3 months, I stopped. And we still get organic leads from Nextdoor, but from a paid advertising standpoint, boy, Nextdoor was a bad source of leads for us. Not for everybody, but it was for us. I want to ask you a question about identifying areas where you can reduce cost. Because a lot of our listeners are all about focused on like growing revenue, but you can also make a lot more money just by spending less. How would you advise them to do that?
I do want to mention one thing because I think there's a lot of value in something you just said. You said 3 months. I got to say hats off to you. What happens a lot of times when we're being sold these advertising services, a lot of times they try to lock you up for a year. And the fact that you only committed to 3 months or maybe that's all they asked for, that's huge. Because I can't tell you how many times businesses come to me, and they're locked into a year contract that's not giving them any return.
Not a good idea.
And it's just a sunk cost. So yeah, kudos to you for keeping that very, like you said, a BB, keeping it very small.
Yeah. What about reducing costs? What are some of the most obvious areas you see on a regular basis with your clients that like people are just overspending?
Yeah, advertising definitely is one. And I don't know if I'd say overspending, just not spending in the right areas.
Wisely, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like to see an aggressive advertising budget. You often hear like 3 to 5% is kind of the common marketing budget. I like to see even sometimes higher than that, like even up to like 8, 10, maybe even, if it's giving you good return and depending on how fast you want to grow.
Okay.
And you can obviously accommodate the growth. If you've got technicians and you can accommodate the growth, then I'm saying advertise more, assuming we're getting the return. If you're already at capacity, that doesn't really make a lot of sense unless you can get the help. But I would say, so where are we overspending? I think things that you got to look at, insurance is always a good one. Now, it's a little hard, I at least put it out to bid. I've had clients that sometimes they stay with the same source and never even take time to look at competing bids, and they'll go out and get a bid and it'll be 20% lower. That's rare, but there is an opportunity.
As long as it's apples to apples, yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge one. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to make sure you're lining up because if you're getting half the coverage and
you get what you pay for,
and you're saving $10, I mean,
right,
yeah. So you got to be careful there, but you do have to review it. I would say, obviously, any professional fees, you got to look at, am I getting return? Not necessarily saying cut, but am I getting return? Is it adding value to my business? Because it's easy to get stuck into that mold where you just kind of always pay the same people just because we always do type of thing. You got to get return. I would say overhead costs where it's like admin costs, you can definitely add too many people if you're not careful. So you guys got to really keep an eye on, do they have clear job specs in terms of what they're supposed to be doing? And am I getting return in terms of what needs to get done? What are other big ones? Office supplies, obviously. And that's just setting up processes and procedures in terms of who can buy stuff. But office supplies can get crazy, and that's
Totally.
kind of a catch-all. So a lot of things get
Like
thrown in that.
apps and
Yeah,
subscriptions is a huge
all
one.
that.
Like MailChimp's so expensive now, and all these different things.
That's actually a great one. I should have brought that up. Licenses can get really out of
Okay, yeah.
control. On you give Mabel and admin left 6 months ago, and you forgot to drop her license, but you added the other new person, so you're paying for 4 licenses when
Right.
you only need one.
Yeah, you're so right. Like, yes, thank you for saying that's so true. You're just paying for all these users that they're not even here anymore.
Not even here. And
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen it thousands of dollars, like literally, just because nobody manages it.
And these are all things you see if you're budgeting each month, if you have a budget for the year, and you're actually paid. And someone told me that you can either work 2 different ways. You can work with your shoulders down, or you can work with your shoulders up. And you're working with your hands and your feet, and you're doing the work in the field, which is fine, or you're working with your head.
Right.
And the business owners listening to this podcast, they need to be working with their minds. They need to be making wise decisions and like looking at these things that really drive their business instead of just kind of letting it go out in no man's land, and they're not thinking about it. It's out of sight, out of mind. Yeah.
So you're kind of pulling me in on this one. It's a little bit soapboxy, but we started this about knowing your numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And being cliche. But really, the money is made in rolling up your sleeves and digging in and using your mind. And it's so easy to go, yeah, I want to know my numbers. But then when you do it, you go, I don't really, it's
terrible.
a pain, and I don't like numbers. And now
And
part
if they're
of it is
bad, it's really discouraging.
exactly true. It's true. And then you stop doing it a lot of times. That's a great point. But that's why you really do want to have a good team around you of financial people, whether it be one person or it be a small team, depending on your size, that really is doing the heavy lifting, breaking it down in an easier way to understand. So you're not doing the heavy lifting, but your mind is in the game in terms of understanding your numbers.
Yeah. Okay, we've talked about reducing costs in overhead. Let's talk about in direct costs, which is, labor-related costs.
Yeah.
So I would say efficiency is the word I use. Whenever I start talking about efficiency, technicians, they don't roll their eyes, but they know where I'm going with this. There are ways for you to shave down. First of all, overtime is a major killer. Talk about overtime.
Yeah, I mean, as a finance person, like when I see overtime, my stomach kind of just gets into a pit because you're basically paying more for the same thing. And so the thing I always go, okay, well, is that really because we're so busy? Is that inefficiency? Is that some people want to make more money and they have the time available to work the extra hours? You really kind of got to understand that. And if it's not being managed, hey, human nature is, I want to make more money, I'll work an extra 2 or 3 hours. I mean, might as well, I'm here anyway. And, you just kind of want to manage that. Like, nothing wrong with working overtime if we're getting the return on it. And it's around capacity and being able to get the job done in time or whatever the issue is. But I see too many times that just really gets out of hand. So I have on a dashboard report, which is a weekly report, my clients, they see what the overtime number is and in comparison to the prior year. And what's interesting is if sales aren't going up dramatically, but overtime's going up.
That's the key. You're exactly right.
What's going on?
That's the key. So with overtime, I'm not saying overtime is bad, and you're not saying that either.
No, not at all.
What tends to be overtime becomes laziness, or overtime happens because of laziness on behalf of the business owner.
Right.
We're not paying attention. And 2, overtime is a great way to bridge the gap between hiring somebody, because paying someone time and a half is better than paying someone else, a full thing. So it makes sense in some cases, but here's what I want to warn our listeners about. Overtime can become just this thing built into your business for no reason. It becomes the ugly couch in your house that you have never gotten rid of. You don't even notice it anymore.
Right.
And you've got to pay attention to overtime. I know some people who their workforce relies on overtime because they get paid a lot more, which I get. But as a business owner, you have to run a healthy business. And sometimes overtime is a main culprit of that.
Yeah, and to take that one step further, you just kind of mentioned this. It starts to become the DNA and the culture of the company if overtime's acceptable. It's just like do whatever you want, carte blanche. And the problem is it's like a takeaway. When you at some point you're going to have to manage that if you want to scale and grow. And that's a hard change to make when it impacts a lot of people. And so the quicker you can kind of get your hands around
You're saying
that,
once it gets baked in the cake, it's hard to take it out.
Exactly. So
Totally.
you said that so much better than me. But you need to think about that because if you're creating that type of culture, that's going to be a hard turn to make. And so the sooner you can address like, hey, that's got to be managed and it's got to it's got to meet our certain criteria of when overtime makes sense. And I do agree with you. It has a place, 100%. I'm not saying it shouldn't be there. It's a great gap between hiring another person and being able to still fulfill customer needs. But it needs to be managed. It's a big cost.
Tyler, this is great. I'm going to summarize our conversation in 3 takeaways here. Number 1, with paid ads on Google, you want to make sure that your service radius is correct. You do not want to be displaying your ads and paying for them to people who aren't even in your service area. It happens way more than I wish it did. Number 2 is, in terms of apps and subscriptions, you want to make sure that you're not paying for users and licenses that they're not even here anymore. They left your company. That's extra cost that you can avoid. And number 3, it's good data helps you avoid problems quickly by seeing trends happen before a trend really emerges. So having good data. Tyler, if someone listening doesn't have good data, where should they even start?
Yeah, I'd say make a list of all your monthly expenses that are your fixed expenses. Start with that. Just lay them out. You and I have talked about this before. Make a list of them. At least you know where you stand every month. It'll give you some awareness of how you start every month in terms of what you need to do to cover your fixed expenses. Now, from there, obviously, let's get those books clean. Let's get some timely data so we can be data driven.
Awesome. Tyler, that was great. How do people find out more about you?
Yeah, thinktyler.com. You can check out my website there. There's an area to reach out to me and contact me. And then also my podcast is on there, Think Business with Tyler.
Awesome. Well, keep doing what you're doing. You're having a good impact on business owners. They need this financial advice, so keep giving it to them. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Adam. Great to be here.
Yeah. And thank you for listening. I hope you heard something that will make your business more profitable and more efficient and more financially strong. I'm your host, Adam Sylvester. You can find me at adamsylvester.com. Your team and your clients deserve your very best, so go give it to them.